CNG Media.
Welcome to Vino with Vito. Today we have Eric Johnson. He's a multi-family investor. Eric was actually a school teacher. He taught my son Ralphie in high school at West Essex High School, and that's how I met Eric. And actually, this is the first time I'm meeting Eric.
Yeah, officially.
Officially. So we got Eric on here to talk about how to invest in multifamily units. And we got our friend Dave that naturally didn't bring any wine.
Did you bring wine?
Oh, he doesn't drink wine. He said only a little bit.
I wasn't going to bring a bottle that I claim is great when I'm not really a drinker.
Yeah.
So, I'm not really a wine drinker.
So today we have our Robert Graham holder, a nice bottle of Torriciano. We actually went to a wine tasting here, and this is a good bottle of wine. This is actually a Malbec. We're going to try something different.
All right, there you go.
And Dave, and no busting on my Robert Graham shirt today.
Not
it's
today.
A short sleeve, all right?
Yeah. Gee, look at those guns.
Oh, you see that?
Yeah, look at that.
I've been working out lately.
Yeah, opening up that wine bottle takes a lot of energy.
It does take a lot of energy.
Jeez. Well, while he's doing that, Eric, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
So, yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do? Like, obviously this is a real estate show, right? I do mortgages. Vito does real estate. So, salute. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about you, what you do for the audience.
Yeah. So, Vito, Dave, thank you for having me on. This is fun. So I'm initially like a high school teacher, as Vito mentioned, and that was kind of my first gig out of college. It was great, but it wasn't for me, and I knew that pretty close to when I started. But I also coached, and I was very passionate about that. So coached baseball. Okay. So I started to transition out of the career by investing in real estate, and I really had no money to start. I didn't know anybody. I had nothing. Thank you.
Here, before we salute, guys.
Salute.
Let's try this one out.
Very good.
Not too shabby. Very good. Very good.
All right. So, yeah, you were saying, so you got out, you had no money.
Yeah, had nothing really to start. Some people obviously start with a lot. We can get into that later, but didn't really have anything. Just had a passion to get out of the middle class life that I kind of lived in, and then I saw so many people living in. Just saw the stress that it brought to people, and it was just when I was young, I just knew it kind of sparked an entrepreneurial thought process, a little bit contrarian when I was younger. And then so I started transitioning out of my teaching career by investing in real estate. And I remember one of the first properties I bought, it was small. It was a duplex. And I remember after 1 year of holding that property, and we can get into the details of that property, the rental income doubled what I was getting from coaching. And I barely did anything for that rental income. And I grinded 12 months of the year for coaching and didn't have anything to show for it in the end. So I started to think to myself, okay, this is definitely going to be my out. This is going to be my transition. This is where I want to be. It was rewarding considering it was actually spitting off cash flow and money, and it was helping me grow in a career that isn't that lucrative. I mean, we can be honest. Teaching, you're not going to make a killing. It's one of the first things they told me. So that helped me transition, and we started to kind of take steps up from the smaller units. We even did like a fix and flip, and all these units that we started buying was in Florida.
Okay.
And I can get into a little bit of how I started there, but from
Yeah,
there,
absolutely.
I transitioned into basically growing my network, meeting syndicators that are doing the same thing at the next level, and kind of took the rope and climbed up to where they were, partnered with them, co-sponsor, and kind of grew a nice portfolio from there.
Now, for the audience, when you say syndicator, what is for the layman? What is a syndicator?
Yeah,
and Vito.
I didn't go to college.
Yeah, for the layman and Vito.
I didn't learn that in college. So this is all self-taught. And funny, before I even mentioned that, I spent teaching wasn't for me, but I spent my summers in Barnes and Noble reading books and just educating myself. It was a free education because I barely bought the books and just read them there. And I learned more, and I learned a more lucrative career there in the
college.
summer than in college that I spent.
Absolutely. Yep.
thousands of dollars.
I mean,
and didn't go anywhere.
Vito's a multimillionaire. He didn't go to college. I mean,
I'm not a
hey, look at his shirts, man. Listen, you know what? You could go to Harvard. The guys at Harvard aren't rocking those shirts, $500 shirts. So
I
believe
believe
me,
it.
you're preaching to the choir.
I believe it.
You guys, you're too funny. Man.
It's true, though. It's true. So syndication.
Right, but it's great how you're telling everybody, hey, you got to read a book. You know, you got to go out there. You got to talk to people.
Yep.
And you know what? You got to pick people's brains all the time.
Absolutely.
And you got to say, hey, this is what I want to do. You know what? I'm going to put 100% into this and all that. I don't want to cut you off, but I'm going to give you a short little story. The other day, I ended up taking out my C8, okay? I'm driving it. I'm coming back home, and I'm parking it. A young kid walking the neighborhood had a little bag with him, and he goes, excuse me. He goes, that's a beautiful car. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And he goes, hey, can I ask you a question? And I'm like, sure. Ask me, what do you do for a living?
Love it.
And I said, you know, I'm into real estate. I sell real estate, you know, invest in real estate and everything. He goes, oh, that's great. I go, what do you happen to be doing walking around here? He goes, well, I go to college. He goes, but I'm actually knocking door to door to sell pest control.
Yeah.
And he goes, but I always like to ask a lot of questions to see what other people are doing and how they got there. I said, you know what, kid? I go, it's good that you're asking all these questions. That's, you know, how it should be. This way you're going to learn a lot more. And he goes, what can you, you know, advise me as a young kid doing? I said, don't give up. I said, keep asking questions and keep talking to people.
Right.
I'll tell you, that it was unbelievable. We had like a 15-minute conversation with
There you
him.
go.
So, but people are out there, you know, that's the way.
That's the name of the game.
That's the name of the game. That's the way. That's the way to do
That's
it.
right.
Especially when you're starting from nothing.
Yeah.
And that was basically my approach. And I think maybe, you know, maybe I'm not sitting here with thousands and thousands of units, but what I am doing is I'm sitting here and telling people, the young generation, probably not far off from me, that you could do it with nothing to start, but you need those things.
Right.
But you can do it. Yeah, and I would add one thing. You had your 3 points on what you told that kid. I would add one more thing in this world, because I think this world has drastically changed. And within the 4 years, within the 20 years, in the next 10 years, it's going to be completely different. I would add one more thing. If you're not adapting, you're not growing.
That's right.
This world is changing by the minute because of whatever, technology, AI, whatever you want to pinpoint.
Right.
It is rapidly changing. If you're not adapting, you're behind.
If you're still doing business the way you were doing 2 years ago, you're gonna fail. I even tell my guys that you have to change.
Even
you have
if
to
it's
adapt.
the easy way.
Right.
It's the easy way to keep doing, and you'll be all right.
Right.
But
If you want to grow,
right? And
If you
people are
wanna
gonna
grow.
right. People are gonna get well ahead of you by changing, and
Right.
you always have to change. Any job you're in, you always gotta
adapt.
You gotta adapt. You can't just sit back and say, hey. That's it. You know what? It's going to come to me. You can't do that.
That's right.
You got to get up in the morning. You got to put a pair of pants on, and you got to go to work. You
Right.
know, and you got to get up early. You got to try to get up a lot earlier than everybody else.
That's right.
By the way, I was up at 5 again this morning
And
on the computer.
and he's not wearing pants. So you know what?
So he had extra time.
Yeah, so he had extra. He's so quick. So Vito is so efficient on his time that he moved the toilet paper holder 3 inches closer to him so that he doesn't waste 3 seconds every day. That adds up over time.
young kids got to learn.
Yeah.
They
That's
got to
it.
learn these
See,
things.
that's the lesson, V. You should share with the audience.
I should.
3
On the
inches
next
makes a
episode,
difference.
it does make a big difference.
So back to syndicated,
sorry.
so kind of give us like your business model.
Yeah.
Like how did you get started? What do you do? Like that kind of thing.
Okay, so simply a syndication is basically, let's just think of it as the person who gets the deal together. They bring in the money, the investors, they're getting the debt, they're managing the manager, they're finishing the acquisition, they're kind of just doing everything. And they're like the centerpiece. They're the sponsor of the whole deal.
Okay.
It can be really at any level, but it's usually when it comes to like your multifamily, your like commercial multifamily, which is like your 4 units and up. We have small syndication. It's nothing crazy, but we sponsor with larger guys who've been doing this for years at a larger scale. How did I get started? Like I mentioned, I was educating myself for really years. Over the course of summer, it's just reading books. I mean, your Rich Dad, Poor Dad, your basics, like idolizing people like Grant Cardone, right? Just consuming content. And the idea was, okay, let's get something small to start. So we did get something small. We got a duplex. The duplex, we fixed up a $15,000, and this is in Florida, in Jacksonville, Florida. We put $15,000 into a rundown apartment in the back. We rented out both. We were doing very well. Returns 10%. Cash flow 10%. It was great. It was an old house, so we had problems in the future, but that's a whole nother story. Then we said, okay, let's keep the money moving. We bought something smaller, a single family in Jacksonville. And we rented it out, and it was doing well because we didn't have any debt on it. We just, it was cheap enough where we just bought it and were able to rent it out and just kind of keeping all the cash flow, which is great. I mean, that's a great way to do it when you don't have to pay a mortgage. Yeah. We rented that for a year, and we basically flipped it and sold it for more than double what we were in for. So it was like a quick hitter, made a lot of money. I told you I didn't come from much. I was a teacher, didn't have much. So that doubling of your money was like, in a year, was like, wow, we're onto something.
Yep.
We got rid of it. We took that money, we put it into something else. And we just kind of kept going. We avoided New Jersey because of a lot of the issues where it's just you need more money to come in.
Right.
You need your taxes take a big chunk. You have a very tenant-friendly type of state, So there was a lot of things that were kind of keeping us away from here. So we went to Florida, and we just kept doing this in Florida. Early on in the pandemic days, we won't say the C word. In the pandemic days, we had an opportunity to buy 10 units, and that's when it kind of became real. And we decided real quick that the smaller unit properties weren't beneficial to us because you couldn't get a multiplier effect. And that, what I'm saying is, under 4 units, those properties just appreciate as the market appreciates. You can't really drive the appreciation. You can fix it and improve it, but there's still rental properties. Everyone's going to just buy them for rents. When we went above the 4 units and we bought a 10-unit property, we now could take, the rents were, I think, on average of each of those 10 units, they were on average $700, $750. We bought it at a good price, but we took those rents from $750 to around $1,400. So we doubled the rents. And when you double the rents on 10 units, you now value a multifamily property using the NOI or the net operating income. So you take the net operating income, or the income minus the expenses, and then you get a number. And then you go ahead and you factor in the cap rates in those areas. And you don't just get a little bit of appreciation. You now drove the rents so high, you get a multiplier effect and the more units, the higher the multiplier effect. So we started to now see our appreciation after doing that and valuing the property, which we still hold, but valuing the property now, we're looking at that number and saying, okay, this is the game. We didn't just flip a small little single family and double our money. We went here and we really made a killing by taking 10 units.
10 units. Now, who's taking care of that property for you in Florida?
We have a property manager.
Okay.
Who we've met, know personally,
right?
And takes care of it.
Now, we want to let everybody know. Now, the property manager charges probably about 5% of the rent, 3% of the rent. I don't know how it works.
We're at 7.5%.
So you give him 7.5% just to run everything down there. But if your cash flow is good, that 7.5% doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but you make a good point that, I think real estate, especially for investors, it's your store of value. You want to grow your wealth, and it is an asset. Real estate is an asset. But now you're talking about the property management expense. I could talk to you about the taxes that raised in Florida. I can tell you about the insurance that skyrocketed triple.
Yeah.
Right. So it is. So in a sense, I'm not gonna lie. We are in the green. We're doing well. We bought it right. We drove the rents, but it's leaking monetary, value. It is because of all those expenses. Not to mention, okay, so we had to do some electric repairs on one of our units or one of our buildings, and the price of copper has gone up, right? The price of lumber has gone up. We had to put floors in, right? So everything as the years go on,
Right.
those things aren't getting cheaper.
No.
So
They
no
keep
matter what
going.
our rents do.
Right, right. And you know what? In today's times, and you try to push this and let everybody know too, is you know what? You have to spend the money to make money.
Right.
Okay. You have to get these buildings in better shape. And how are you going to double the rent if the buildings run down? So you're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
By doing that.
So how are you getting the properties? Because that's the question that people are going to ask, right? Like you have a 10 unit. How are you securing financing for it? Because a lot of people listen and say, yeah, it's great. It's cash flow and you double the rent from $750 to $1,400. However, I'm just starting out. I don't have any money or I have very minimal funds. And I read on the internet, let's just say that you have to put, 40% down on a 10 unit property to mortgage it. So can you talk to us, if you could, a little bit about how you're getting financing for it? Like, how are you getting these deals?
Yeah. So first, I can backtrack to when we first bought there in Jacksonville. I literally got on a plane. I made a couple meetings with some property managers, some asset managers, some real estate players, and I literally just went there and I met with them, bought them coffees, I bought them lunch. I didn't know the market, I didn't know the people.
Right.
So I just networked like crazy and over years.
Okay.
And that even brought me to, you should get in touch with this guy. This guy's a lender in this space. He works with investors. So really just growing your network right there is huge for anyone who's trying to start. If you don't know anybody and you think you're just going to go out there on like LoopNet and look for a home and purchase it, you need a huge network. And if you don't have the huge network, find somebody who you can partner with that has a bigger network.
Right. So you're looking for private money then, basically.
So we were looking for more private money, but not completely. So we did have we bridge loan a couple of our properties just to kind of take it off the market, secure it, and then go ahead drive the rents, and then we refinanced. So there are. Let me say this: there are products that can get it done, but the problem is also right now none of those products' interest rates make sense. So we've been at a 12 to 20 month of nothing.
Right.
No movement. So who's going to lend? Well, if you put 50% down, you can
they're going to lend your money, right?
Yeah.
You can get a bridge product.
Right.
Or you're going to go hard money, 10, 12%, couple points.
Yep.
But sometimes if the building makes sense, why not use the hard money? Get it up and running, get the income, and then you can go to a bank, and say, hey, I want to pull the money out of it. I've seen people do that in the past where, they pull it out after they have the hard money in there. So why not do that? If it makes sense, hey, anything that makes sense today, that's what you want to do to get started and get up and running.
Yeah, and listen, you can get hard money from private source, right? You can just basically say, Uncle Vito, I need $1 million.
If I had it, I'd give it.
And to be honest, that's your network when you're young.
Right.
When you're young, that's your network, and that's okay. You can. Some people don't do business with family, but the fact of the matter is,
hey, they're going to put a lien on the property. I mean, I know people today that are lending hard money. They actually stopped investing in real estate and just lending the hard money. And one of the guys, I was asking him, I'm saying, why are you doing that? He goes, well, think about it. He goes, I'm going to give a loan at 12%. I'm going to charge him 3 points. My name is actually going to be, I'm first lien holder. They default, guess what? I'm taking the property.
You're taking the property.
So,
yeah, and it could be a safe play for people. I realized this 24 months has been very strange. Nothing's moving, but I notice the further the money gets from actually managing the property, that money is not necessarily protected, but is not really worried too much. They're just hanging on. A lot of that money that came in to invest, like that private equity, as long as they can just wait it out, they don't worry. It's the syndicators and the managers themselves that are sweating.
Right.
So it's
they're long on their money.
They're long on their money, and not only do they hold risk being in that position? Sure, but You
Right.
know,
It's calculated.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys, I'll be honest with you, they're multimillionaires.
Yep.
You know, and they're not worried about losing their 100, 150.
Correct.
200, 250 in some cases, you know, and that's just the reality of it.
And they got there to be multimillionaires by taking the risk. And if they didn't take the risk in the beginning, they would have never got there. So.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that being long on your money, I think that's like literally the secret. That's the cheat code, if you ask me. Like, get long on your money. And then, you know, when you're young, it's hard to be long on your money.
Right. Because you need cash flow immediately.
And you're trying to build up your net worth. So you're not quite there yet. But if you can really just think long term, that's like a whole shift in your brain, like for all things, life, you know, finances. Everything.
Yeah, look at the stock market crash in '08, the real estate market crash in '08. Right?
Yeah.
You fast forward, 16 years later, if you went long,
Yeah.
you more than tripled, quadrupled your money, especially in
Yeah.
the stock market.
Yeah. Well, even after 2020, the market dipped. In March of 2020, the market almost lost half its value, and then it came back.
There you go.
Yeah.
That was even quicker. In 4 years, look what you got
Yeah.
back. Or even in real estate, you know, buying during, you know, the pandemic, you bought ahead of the pandemic in 18, 19, and then you sold your property. You're like, wow, it was more than back in 05, 06 you were making.
Yeah.
So these prices have just gone through the roof. So, you know, in New Jersey, like you said, it's crazy to buy something out here. But going into Florida, and I believe you said you're also in another state. What other state are you in?
Yeah, and so in Ohio, we worked with some syndicators in Ohio, and we have like a 6-property unit there, which is humming along. But a lot of syndications, I suggest a lot of people in this environment get into syndications because the larger the property, the more scale, so you can generate higher returns. You can buy them better. And you also, it's just, because of the scale, I feel like it's an easier, more safe route because, right, you go ahead, you lose 10 units on, you know, vacant 10 units on a 250 unit property. It's like,
Right.
So you have more room for error. But yeah, so we were in that market with some other syndicators, but they don't pay out cash flow. So we'll talk about being long on your money. If you really can be an investor that's long on your money, we're hoping to get return multiples of what we put in, but you got to wait 5 years for multiples of what you put in. You know, so that's very common. I think it's over 70% of syndicators don't pay out cash flow these days, and especially now. Especially now.
Do you know that, Vito?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
No, I did not know that.
You did not know that. See?
See, I'm learning something new every day. They say as long as you learn one new thing every day, you're going to get ahead.
That's it.
You gotta adapt.
I just learned that today.
See that?
I'm adapting.
You gotta adapt.
What do you feel about buying land?
I mean, there's a lot of different levels of that. I think any valuable land right now in a good location, you have developers who have absolutely exploded their bottom line since COVID that are scooping up anything that makes sense. And if you can compete with some of those guys who are entrenched in the communities and the politics of the community, that's great.
If you can even find a piece of land now, that's the other issue.
Well, not in New Jersey. I mean, he's Ohio, Florida. Like, yeah.
I was in Arizona with Ralphie last week, and let me tell you, there's a lot of land out there.
A lot of desert.
A lot of desert, but a lot of land. You're just driving. And they were saying, we're on a tour, and we're driving, and you see all these trailers, right? And they were saying, they were selling acres for like $1,000 or whatever. And people are not even building on them. They're just parking their trailer and living out there, which is it's insane. Insane. Try doing that here in Jersey.
Yeah. If you can buy one of those pieces of land and wait and pass it on to your kids, and hopefully one day that's a development site, then
you get
great.
lucky, yeah.
I mean, if you go to Arizona and you go to Phoenix and there's a piece of land, do you know anything about it? I don't know anything about it, but the developers there probably do. If you can get in with a developer who raises private equity and you have the money to do it, that's great too. Right. And I keep coming back to that concept a little bit.
Of networking and a relationship, right?
Of networking, one, and then also if you have the money.
Yeah.
Like that seems to be a huge trend in real estate right now, is if you have the money. Like it became this store of value more than like a way to grow your net worth from like zero.
Yep.
Because you're competing against all cash. cash,
Right.
multi-millionaire family offices, all cash, and we are slightly discouraged right now because we are putting in higher offers that need debt, that need 5 to 10 people to come in to provide the equity for that debt, and we're getting beat out by a lower
cash.
offer, all cash for $3 million.
Sure.
It's almost like if you have $5 million and you're starting, you're not too late.
Right.
If you have less, it kind of sometimes feels like you might be too late, and that's
Right.
discouraging for a lot of people. It's not an excuse necessarily, but
And it's crazy. You think about it, right? 3 million, 5 million years ago. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Today,
Yeah.
you might be able to buy a nice single family home in
For a
New
million-
Jersey
for $1 million.
for $1 million
Yeah.
if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And people are coming out, like you said, all cash, waiving everything, and just to get that property, which is just insane.
Yeah.
And multi-units here, you can't even touch. I mean, like you said before, you're getting 10%, right? People are buying multifamilies here and making 3%, 4%.
that's everywhere now.
It's insane.
everywhere now.
But what I don't get is you're going to make 3% on that property. The bank's giving you 5% if you have the money to keep in the bank, right? Why not keep it in the bank? Why invest it in there? But if everybody think about this, what does real estate do? It always grows. Okay, it'll bottom, it'll come down, but eventually it'll grow. The rents will grow and everything else.
You're playing the long game.
That's it.
That's
We're
what
back
you're
to
doing.
that.
You,
Right.
you can afford. You have enough money that you can afford to store your value and your wealth in an asset that pays you zero.
Yep.
Because you're playing the long game and you can afford to play the long game, and you know that's going to be triple the price in 5 to 10 years.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not only just in real estate, it's in cars, antique cars that come up in value. There's a lot of different art. We had Federico Casaluccio, and, we're talking about art. And art, keeps increasing too. But like you said, you park your money. If you have it to park it, you know what?
Right.
Eventually it'll appreciate.
Right.
And you'll make a nice return on it.
Off the air, you should definitely hit up Uncle Vito. He's always looking for investments.
No, Uncle Vito don't have that kind of
It's not always multi-millions,
Yeah,
It could be
come on.
small stuff. And I have partners that what I've been doing lately is those larger syndicators. Anyone who expresses interest, I kind of say, I have some partners who I trust that I would pass you on to, and I just make the connection. So
There you go, V.
It could be as small as 50,000, investment to get in.
Let me $50K, Dave. I'll invest.
I'll give you a home equity loan.
Give me no.
I'm curious to hear from you guys. You mentioned everything keeps going up, real estate keeps going up, and it does. It's crazy. I'm just curious, where do you think it's stemming from? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, but I would like to kind of hear it from you guys.
Same thing. Everything is supply and demand. I mean, if there's no supply out there and you have the demand, you know what? It's going to keep raising the prices and keep going up.
Yep.
But eventually, you're going to see more and more properties coming on the market. Like right now, properties are hitting the market all the time. You do the hot sheets and you're seeing all these houses come up on the market, but you just don't know. You don't know where it's going to go. I think at this point is to play it safe. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, remember the rates shot up to 7% or so. I had someone selling, 3 brand new construction, and thought they were going to get X amount. The prices the price of lumber, building materials, everything skyrocketed, and the market, the interest rates hit 7 or 7.25%. And it seemed like it had just bottomed out. And it's like, oh my God, where are we going? It's, we're going to go south now. And sold those properties for a lot less money. Well, guess what? This was like in July. Come September, October, people forgot about the interest rate again. And all of a sudden, the properties came right back up and things were selling for a lot more. So if those houses were held for literally 3-4 months, you would have probably got 100, 200 grand more for those houses.
Yeah.
And who can hold those?
And who can hold those?
The
Especially
big money.
The big money, right?
Right.
Which is crazy.
It's also there's a number of things though to your to your question. Supply and demand is the number one, but what has caused that supply and demand, right? And it's really 2 things, right? One, it's builders have been holding back since the financial crisis. And seriously, if you think about it as a builder, what's your incentive right now? to build more and more and more when you're getting top dollar, right? You could build at a nice pace and still make, top dollar for your, for what you're putting out in the market. So there's no incentive for builders to really speed it up. And then the second thing is, we've talked about this on the show before, is, we're in kind of a rate lockdown, right? Everybody during pandemic refinanced and has a rate below 4% for the most part. And, it's kind of kept a lot of people on the sidelines with selling their home and listing their home. Why would I, sell my home, get rid of my 3% mortgage, and pay double on the rate and on the property value, right? And there's also been, baby boomers who are going into retirement age, where the natural flow would be, let me sell my house, downsize, move out of state, whatever the case is. That has not been happening. So like the mechanics of the housing market have not been moving as smooth as, or as normally as they usually do. They will again, but how long will it take? Nobody knows.
So you both kind of mentioned the supply and demand. Obviously, that was like the center of what you said. I'm just curious when it comes to the art and the cars and the stock market, all-time highs. Like we're literally in a recession, and there's all-time highs. Like, well, not literally in a recession. We are figuratively in a recession, and they're whatever. So why is everything going up?
It's just everybody's looking at it. Hey, real estate is keeping us going right now, right? Everybody's got equity in their homes. You had people 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that were going to get foreclosed, right? And had no equity in their home. All of a sudden now their house is worth double or even more than that. So guess what? They have so much equity in their home, so their
balance sheet's
their
clean.
balance sheet is clean again. So that, I think, is driving a little bit of it. Yeah, people, like you said, cars, art, everything else. Look what happened back in '08 when the stock market collapsed. The value of these cars went down. The value of art went down. I remember you were able to buy a Ferrari Testarossa, I think, for like 40 grand. Go try buying one of them now.
Crazy.
Everything comes back. And can it happen again? Absolutely.
Stock market's forward thinking too, right? So don't forget, like,
You're always 6 months out.
Yeah, the value of those securities, right? Some of it's speculation, some of it's what's given to the analyst, right? Like on on Wall Street. So a lot of it's forward thinking, right? Optimism, what's going on, right, in the market as well. Like, we do have a stock market right now that was fed, okay, with lower rates for a long time, right? So the market is finding its own footing right now, and I think it's actually doing really well. So, like, it's amazing where the stock market is, right? And if you really look at if you read the financials of a lot of the companies, and a lot of companies that are doing well, the American consumer's strong. These companies are making money, right? Like, look at Walmart, right? Look at Home Depot. Look at these companies, Apple, right? These companies are making money. So the consumer's strong right now.
Yeah,
That's what's keeping us going.
Yeah, thank God.
yeah. I feel like we're having a big currency issue right now. I am completely convinced that when you go into a pandemic and you print trillions of dollars, 40% of the money supply, and you jam it into the system in every corner, and it's still flowing through at 18, 20 months after they did the last money printing, I just feel like you've completely changed the dynamic of the currency. You literally debased it just by printing. It's simple supply and demand of currency, right? And of goods. You have more money chasing fewer goods, even with some of the supply chain issues because of the pandemic. And I feel like we've had the reserve currency of our planet, of basically the planet, for a long time going right now. This is the powerful dollar. But I feel like you weaponize it with some nations by taking it away from them, restricting certain nations. You print a ton of it, you debase it, and now you look around and you try to act like, oh, we're not really sure. It's the consumer's fault because they're spending too much. Not so sure. I mean, we put rates up as high as we possibly can. We start breaking the banks in order to do it, just to curb inflation, and we still can't get it to 2. I mean, there's something fundamentally wrong with our currency, and I think it's showing up in real estate. I I think real estate is the aha. This is really obvious, right? Is your home that is getting older by the day and falling apart by the day, the properties, the investment properties that are falling apart by the day, are they more valuable?
Well, what do you think the answer is though with the currency, right? Because and I've been hearing that my whole life, right? And there was like Ron Paul used to run years ago, and it was always the Fed, get rid of the Fed, get rid of the Fed, right? Everybody wants to get rid of the Fed until you need the Fed. Okay, so and I'll tell you, like, just from being in the financial markets and especially being there in 07, 08, 09, right? Everyone hates the Fed, but if it wasn't for the Fed buying up all those bonds and mortgage-backed securities and bailing out AIG and all these companies, this country would have been gone. So you can't get rid of the Fed, and we're not going back to the gold standard. That's not going to happen either.
No.
So because it's easier to print money, right? And will always be the world's, I think, backup or currency, right? So these are the things that, like, yes, while it stinks that inflation's higher right now and grocery bills, everything costs more, right? I think it was you, or I forgot who said it. These things are still keeping the real estate market strong, and at the end of the day, they're all tied together, right? Yeah, we're paying more here, we're paying more there, but there's a price for it, and it's what you said during the pandemic. We flushed the system with money, but we had to.
We had to.
Yeah,
no choice. You're right.
Yeah,
You're
and
right.
now housing is feeling the effects of it right now, right? We really are, if you think about it. And we say that, like, well, then you think to yourself, well, I'm a seller, I'm not really feeling it, right? But as a buyer, you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So I think that's kind of, this is the end game of coming out of a pandemic, right? And nobody really knows. Like, you even asked us, like, do you see where home prices will level off, right? We don't know, because nobody on earth has been where we are right now in this country. We've never had a pandemic like that. I mean, we've had pandemics, but
nothing like that.
Nothing like that.
I got a phone call yesterday. I'm sitting in the office doing a couple of things on the computer. The phone rings. Someone on the other end. Hi, I wanted to speak to a realtor. I said, I'm a realtor. Vito Cantuzzi, I can help you. She goes, okay. I'm thinking about moving out of Bergen County, and I'm thinking of coming to Fairfield. I said, sure, no problem. How could I help you? Well, let me give you my criteria, what I'm looking for. I said, okay. So she goes, I want to buy a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house. I know Fairfield has flood zones, but I want to be out of the flood zone. And I want to spend around $650,000. I said, okay. And she goes, but here's the other issue. I want a house built after 2007, 2008. I said, okay. I said, no problem, because she's like, older homes need updating or whatever. And I don't want anything in the 1900s. I want some. Okay, no problem. I go on the computer. I said, okay, well, we have no houses for you to pick from right now. I said, I have a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath for $769. Well, that's out of my price range, what I told you. I said, okay, that was built in the 60s. I go, I have something built in 98 for $999,000. She goes, well, that's out of my price range. I said, I'm just giving you a heads up of where these property values have gone up.
It's an awakening.
Right. And she's like, well, I can't, buy a house there. I said, I'm going to be totally honest with you. At this point in time, you can't do it. And she was like, oh, thank you for being honest with me. Maybe I'll stay right where I am. But it's a rude awakening for people.
That conversation is what's going on all over the country. So that's why we're at a standstill right now in the market.
Right. And I do want to see home prices up 50% in some nice towns since the beginning of the pandemic.
Yep.
I would beg to differ on the fact that the salaries have gone up that much.
No, income never keeps up. Yeah.
So, like, where are we heading? Where are we heading?
Well, you're heading towards a massive amount of credit card debt. And we've talked about this.
Where we're at.
There's huge
credit
card debt. and I was reading an article. I think Microsoft just laid off 100 people. Google just laid off people again.
Yeah.
You start seeing more and more layoffs, and that's when...
that's when interest rates will start coming down.
Right.
And then what happens to the prices of everything?
Yeah.
Risk on. there it goes again.
And these are just the economic cycles.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know what? And and I think the point of having you on the show is, right, like, and when we have people on here is that, regardless of the economy, right? Regardless of where we are. I mean, listen, Vito and I were out hustling during 06, 07, 08 when the market was crashing, and we built our business, right? Because regardless of where we are in the economy, if you have a plan and you stick to it, you'll make money. And I think you're evident of that. I mean, look, you're making money in a tough real estate market. So.
You're 100% right. But I would say this. I think people starting out are at more of a disadvantage than I was. And that system doesn't seem sustainable. No matter the economic situation and the rate situation, it doesn't seem sustainable when my grandparents bought homes and taught me all about buying homes and fixing up the other side of the duplex and living in it, and they bought it for $30,000 and now they're selling it for $500,000, and we're out here scrapping as new investors to really find every dime that we have in order to close.
See, everybody says that, and like even when I was starting in mortgages in '98, like, oh, I feel sorry for you starting right now, right? And I've my business has gone. Technology has made my business explode, right? So I will tell you this: I always think that the next generation can do better, and I'll challenge what your grandfather said because look, you quit a safe job, and probably have reached heights with freedom and earning potential that your grandfather never dreamed of. He probably worked a job like my grandfather, right? And
funny story about my grandfather. He was a truck driver for Budweiser. So he really didn't have any super lucrative type job, but he was really able through.
But he was good with money, right? He was thrifty, right?
He taught me a lot of what I know.
But think about it though. He said, and you said, well, you're at a disadvantage even today, right? I don't think so because your kids will have it even easier than you did if they follow the formula.
Right. They got to get out there. They got to talk to people. Right. They got to do whatever they have to do. And again, you taught Ralphie, and Ralphie is reaching out to you, talking to you about investments, seeing that you're buying multifamilies. And meanwhile, I'm his dad, and we talk about it all the time too. But I love it that he's not just talking to me.
He's talking to everyone.
He's talking to everybody.
He's doing the right thing.
He's doing the right thing. Hey, I'm going to get something from Dad. I'm going to get something from this guy. We were at the eye doctor yesterday, and there was a book. And he looks at this book. He goes, wow, I didn't read this book. He goes to the eye doctor. He goes, can I borrow this? And the guy's like, absolutely. Take it home. When you come back, bring it back.
That's right.
And you know what? He's going to read that book. He's just out there.
With his new glasses.
With his new glasses. He's out there pushing and striving. He started an internship as a freshman today in Morristown, actually.
That's awesome.
So
nice.
Working. So, you know what? I'm glad for him, but he's learning and he's got to keep going.
And Vito, if I could give you some advice, go to the Barnes & Noble now.
I got to start reading.
No, put your business card in every real estate book.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah, there you go, Vito.
That's what I should start doing.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not going to read the book. So, but Eric, I think this was a great, real great conversation, and buying and holding real estate and everything. I believe that made you get your real estate license too, right?
Yeah. Actually, it was funny because when I started buying and buying investment properties, I kind of wanted to know more about how it works. Mm-hmm. So I got my license back when I first started. So I've had it for 7-8 years at this point, but I never did anything. And now we're coming up on like the 1 year mark where like I actually officially put it into practice.
Nice.
So so it's kind of like a new venture. Something's
that's good.
I learn new things, but I was so entrenched in the buying and selling process
might
that
as
it was
well. Might as well get your license.
Kind of second nature.
Well, hopefully this show gets you some more connections
and go from there. But I really enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope everybody gets something out of it. I have a nice Vino with Vito T-shirt for
Thank you.
And I know you're from West Essex. Just be careful. If you wear that in the park in Fairfield, the squirrels will attack. Okay. So,
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I'd definitely love to do this again. I think we can probably talk about the
we
current
can
situation.
talk about this for hours,
hours.
and hours. But
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming. And my wine is done. So on that note, one day, and that day will come when you need to buy or sell real estate. And when that day does come, you need to call Vito Cantuzzi, the godfather of Northern New Jersey.